Today is the day. Arsenal, Manchester City at the Etihad Stadium for what is the clash of the season as Arsenal look to make a 1 point gap become a 4 point gap and really turn the screw on the title race. Not only that, but we've got to talk about quite a couple of special teenagers doing some very special things with Jack Wilshere's under 18 side to give us quite a nice boost into the weekend. Plus, more, we've got more Premier League roundup and Thomas Tuchel getting quite badly hurt in a footballing sense ahead of their massive game against Arsenal in the Champions League. This is a very special Arsenal news show. Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys for another episode of what is the Arsenal news show, joining you every morning at 8 a.m. This point's important, UK time. Thank you so much for those that have remembered. Thanks for those of you, of course, in the UK that have no choice. Our clocks have gone forward and we have nothing that we can do about that. But everywhere else in the world, for those that are tuning in, of course, this show is now an hour earlier. So you need to bear that in mind whenever you're watching the show. I am expecting, of course, some people to be sending me messages like, why was the show at a different time? Well, the show is at a different time because our clocks have gone forward. So there you go. You know now, this is when the show will be for the next 6 months until our clocks go back in October later this year. So thank you to everyone that's tuning in. But today, perhaps more than any other, the like challenge is under threat because there's a lot of people that won't be tuning in at the usual time. They may even miss it on their YouTube feeds. So I implore you, please, if you haven't done so already, please do drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you are new to it, and make sure that also, of course, that you are doing everything you can to push us towards our target of 1,000 likes in every single show. But good morning to those joining us in the chat box. Thank you so much, as always, for doing so. We've got Kaiser and Matt G and Peter, Peekahoo. We've got Glenn. We've got Paul, we've got Damien, Morgie, Stephen, Jose, AJ, NSW, Amira, Carl, Temi, Popeye. We've got Louis and Gunners Elite, Stevie, Maximius, Barry T, Stephen, Steve, Carlton. We've got Rancid, Graham. We've got Martin, Katana, Tabani, Robert, Trader Mike. We've got Keith. Loads of people in the chat box this morning. So good to see so many regulars and irregulars as well. Julian, we've got Alex, we've got Marble Halls, we've got Paul, Brunilla. Thank you, Brunilia. Sorry, thank you so much. Bonilia, I'll try it a third time. Thank you for all of you for tuning in. I really appreciate everyone that's doing so, especially on today's different scheduling as well, which, as I say, is going to be the same going forwards all the time. It's going to be this time in the UK. And of course, you might have different daylight savings at different times throughout the world. So it may change for that. So be aware of whenever your clocks are changing for whatever reason. But as I said, this is a very special Arsenal news show joining you this morning because it is on the day of the big one, Manchester City versus Arsenal at the Etihad Stadium. But before all that, we've got some other things that we need to discuss before we get into that game. And of course, your questions as well in part two. So let's kick things off with just one note. You may have noticed over the last, I think, couple of weeks, that when I talk, if you're listening on audio, this won't matter to you. But if you're watching on YouTube, you may have noticed that when watching, sometimes the video is sometimes a little bit and has been like a split second out of sync with what I'm saying, which is obviously really frustrating at times. And the reason for that and why it was like that is because we were using our new camera, which was going through a USB streaming port. And now, because of, well, you guys, because there's been some very generous donations in the last few days, and as I've always mentioned, that we try and plug and push as much of the investment you guys give to the channel back into it. What we've done is we've now got a capture card working with a HDMI cable, which is, it's not perfect yet, but what it is doing is it is helping us to reduce that slight delay significantly. So it's nearly 1-for-1. It's very, very close. I don't think many of you really would have noticed, even if I hadn't have brought it up, which now is probably going to bug you. But also it means that hopefully the clarity and the visual should be even better, barring, of course, internet connection. So a massive thank you to all the support in the last couple of days or so. It's helped us to improve the channel yet again and improve things even more here. So thank you for that. let's jump into the stories, though. And we actually start outside of England. We move to Germany for our first story because yesterday Bayern Munich lost at home to Borussia Dortmund in Der Klassiker, in which we saw goals from Karim Adeyemi and a player I've not come across too much, Julian Reierson, who is one of Borussia Dortmund's new young players, I can only assume, who's done some quite spectacular things playing in this right back position. He's a 26-year-old. I say young, he's 26. This is the thing. I don't know anything about this guy because my knowledge of Bundesliga football has certainly gone down the pan, it seems, recently. He joined from Union Berlin in January of 2023, and he's now playing plenty of games, it seems, for Borussia Dortmund. 16 appearances so far this season, starting plenty. He did have a ligament injury which kept him out, but he's been playing in both right back and left back positions, but he got the second goal on the day. Dorian says he's been there for a few years, Norwegian international. There you go. So someone who really completely off my radar. He scored the second goal for Dortmund yesterday, but that means, of course, there is now a 13-point gap because thanks to Patrick Schick and co, Bayern Munich came from 1-0 down to win their game with 2 late goals. Once again, they just never lose that side, and they could yet go the season invincible. But the big point of the day was Archie Rinter on ESPN spoke to Thomas Tuchel after the game and asked about that Arsenal fixture, of course, that they've got coming up. And yet he said, still, we are able to beat Arsenal, even if today this is hard to believe. He made sure to point out that Bayern, despite the fact that, of course, they've had a difficult performance, they can still return and turn things around with some very, very big and high scorelines, basically, to turn things around for them. So, yes, I think that game still, despite the fact that Bayern are struggling, they will be a massive challenge for Arsenal. Of course, it also saw Harry Kane miss some absolute sitters. It's got to be said, he missed 2 huge chances for Bayern, despite coming straight back into the starting lineup after missing his games for England as well. Now, moving to Arsenal and something more specific. Yesterday, we saw Arsenal's under-18s take on Fulham in what was quite a special game because the Arsenal under-18s managed to win 5-2. And not only that, excuse me, I've got a bit of a cough this morning. So you'll hear me muting throughout. But not only that, but Chido Obi-Martin, the 16-year-old star striker, scored not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 goals in the game against Fulham. And Max Dowman, who is a 14-year-old, let's say that again, a 14-year-old playing under-18s football, got 3 assists and won a penalty. So if you want to call that another assist, he got 4. So 4 goals, 3 assists, unbelievable, amazing, absolutely brilliant stuff, and an amazing result for them. And it tells you once again the level of talent that we've got going into this game, going into these coming years. It's scary. And we're bringing more in. Braden Clark. So Harry Clark left a couple of years ago. Braden Clark, of course, who Arsenal signed from Wolves. He started the game as well at centre-half too. And we've got more young players, of course, to really excite, I think. And Jack Wilshere's got a lot of talent at his disposal. But yes, these 2 in particular, Dowman and Obi-Martin, are 2 certainly to keep your eyes peeled to. Now, the Premier League yesterday took part 8 games in a very busy Saturday, and one that was full of drama. It kicked off with one of the games of the season so far. Newcastle 4, West Ham United 3. West Ham going 3-1 up early in the second half before losing in quite spectacular fashion 4-3, thanks to Harvey Barnes' impact from the bench and then Anthony Gordon getting sent off for kicking the ball away in the final moments of that game as well. He'll get a 1-match suspension. A game which saw plenty of injuries occur to both sides and players losing, clubs losing some of their key players throughout. And as I mentioned, Gordon will be missing for another game for Newcastle. Now, I don't know if I caused a bit of a stir, but I put a tweet out yesterday. I don't know if you saw this. If you watched the game, you know what I'm talking about. But West Ham's second goal, there's been a few disagreements about this. I had a chat with some of our members yesterday about this. I don't think that should stand, personally. I know that some people are saying that's soft. I know some people are a bit sick and tired and fed up of head injuries being faked. I don't think that goal should have stood. It's just my opinion. I think he gets a proper thwack in the face from Kudus, and he's down on the floor, and the ref decides, despite the fact that there is, in quote marks, a head injury, to play on, and obviously leads to West Ham's second goal. For me, I think that should absolutely not have stood, and I think it's a really poor refereeing decision. But I know that not everyone agrees with me on that, but that was personally my view, and I'm really very curious to see kind of how the fallout from that game and certainly how some of the referees see it as well. Now, Bournemouth beat Everton in a really important game for them with a late goal to secure all 3 points. Really bad result that for Everton. Chelsea. Chelsea drew 2-2 against Burnley, conceding from a corner as well to drop 2 points at home to a bottom three side. Mauricio Pochettino under increasingly um, amounting pressure. Kind of crazy that they dropped points in that fixture. Nottingham Forest came from behind to get a valuable point against Crystal Palace in a 1-1 draw. Sheffield United managed to blow another lead late on. They were 3-1 up against Fulham with around 15, I think, minutes to go. And yet 2 more late goals with Muniz in the 93rd minute. He really is scoring plenty of goals. Is Muniz for Fulham getting on the score sheet. Another high-scoring game there, 6 goals. Tottenham getting incredibly lucky again, having to rely on another late goal to win their game against Luton Town at home. Of course, Arsenal will be facing Luton on Wednesday. And then Aston Villa scoring twice. Wolves again failing in the West Midlands derby, if you like, and certainly one that Gary O'Neill will be frustrated with, but Unai Emery continuing to respond to what was a disappointing defeat not so long ago, of course, as well. And then the evening game, again, another dramatic late finish. Manchester United thought they had has to be wrongfully, stolen 3 points from Brentford. Brentford ended up having 31 shots in the game against Manchester United. I think that might be one of the highest shot games that we've seen in Manchester United's history in which they weren't the team getting absolutely peppered and battered with opportunities. Mason Mount scoring in the 94th minute, I think, or maybe even the 96th minute, I think it was. And then at the end, Ajer popping up 3 minutes later to give Brentford a deserved goal, which they should have had plenty more. And then Erik ten Hag went into the press conference in what was probably one of the most anticipated press conferences we have ever seen, and decided to say that the international break sees always a lower return, despite the fact that's the same for all teams, and then go to say that Manchester City were lucky to beat Brentford. This man knows no bounds of raising just excuse after excuse, honestly. For those Man United fans that are still quote unquote trusting the process, I feel for you, because they're just, I mean, there were bad times under Arteta. There were tough times under him, don't get me wrong, but at least we could see what was happening. At least we could see, the light through the trees. There is no light with Erik ten Hag. He is such a poor coach to not take responsibility ever for his side. Absolutely ridiculous. I'm surprised he didn't bring up Arsenal, to be honest, in what he spoke about, but he didn't. And there it is. Now, of course, Arsenal, as I've mentioned, we've been going 30 minutes in this show. We've not yet talked about it. Man City against Arsenal today at the Etihad Stadium. Yesterday evening, we did our preview show. So if you want to get a more dedicated chat about today's game and you've not yet watched it, please do make sure you jump over to the latest upload on the channel. It's the last live upload. I was joined by 3 of our fantastic members. We had Bryce. We had Damien, of course, as well. Me and him had a little bit of a discussion about that West Ham goal as well before the game kicked off. And we had Tom Sable, of course, as well. A fantastic quadruple to certainly get involved with. So make sure you go and catch up on that. But Declan Rice has actually been speaking, I believe it was to the Telegraph, and has been doing a number of interviews. We can read the full website, full article on the website, of course. But just wanted to pick out one of those points that he was talking about, because this is the first time since the Community Shield, the first time this league season that we will see Declan Rice face off against Rodri in the midfield. And he's been talking about it. He says he is a monster. When you speak to these City lads at England, they say when Rodri doesn't play, they feel the difference themselves. Visibly, you can see that too. And we did see that, of course, at the Emirates earlier this season. He has gone unbeaten for 61 games. More than a year without losing a match. Any game whatsoever that he has been involved with, that he has played in, he has never lost in that space of time. 61 fixtures. Absolutely ridiculous. But Arsenal will be hoping to bring that to an end today. That is what the aim is. That is what Arsenal need to do. The question is, can they do it? And of course, that is where we leave ourselves with our final thoughts ahead of the game against Man City. I have been obviously pretty calm, I think, about this game over the lead up to it through the international break, knowing that it was coming. But this is an opportunity for Arsenal to take themselves to a new level. This is an opportunity for Arsenal to put themselves in a bracket of clubs that don't do this very often, and that's beat Manchester City twice in one season. They may have to do it 3, perhaps 4 times in the Champions League as well, depending on what happens later on this season. But this is an Arsenal team that believes. This is an Arsenal team that has the quality to be able to do it. And this is an Arsenal team that is managed by a manager who absolutely gets the understanding, the principles, the history, and everything that it means to be Arsenal. And we go there this time without fear. We go there this time with absolute confidence. We go there with momentum. We go there with a mission. And we cannot allow the situation to overrule us, and we cannot allow this game to get away from us. We need to be controlled, we need to be composed, and we need to be clinical. And if we are all of those things, then I absolutely believe that we will take away all 3 points. There are question marks, of course, about certain players. We don't know who is going to be fit. We don't know who is not going to be fit. And we will not know those facts until very much later in the day. But whatever happens, whatever team is selected, whoever is available will all be singing from the same hymn sheet, because that is what Mikel Arteta has achieved at this club. He has achieved complete and utter synergy between his team and his players. And I know that we are in the best place possible to ever possibly have a chance of winning this fixture. Now, you can be within the best possible chance of getting a fantastic deal for NordVPN. NordVPN, of course, is the fantastic service which provides you the safety and security that you need to take on your biggest challenges of staying safe on the internet. It also gives you the ability to go and change your geolocation on your laptop, your mobile, or your tablet as well. And I implore you to get involved with the deal that you can go to by going to nordvpn.com/Gooner to get yourself a significant discount off a 1 or a 2-year deal. You get 3 months thrown in free. I'm going to try to say that 10 times when I'm drunk one day. You get 3 months thrown in free with a 1-year deal, 4 months thrown in free with a 2-year deal. And if you're not happy with the service for whatever reason, you get a 30-day money-back guarantee as well. Who can say any fairer than that? Well, you can also get involved with the final remaining tickets of the Football Prizes Dennis Bergkamp signed and framed Arsenal shirt, of which there are just over 50 left from the 400 or 399 that went on sale at the start of this week. Best of luck to everybody that gets involved with this. Link and details are in today's video description, and I implore you to get involved. And it is, of course, as always, I must mention, UK only. Right, let's go to part 2 and your questions then right after this. Okay, part 2. We're going to jump into the chat and we're going to tackle some of your questions, and we're going to try and remain as feasibly calm as possible, because there is something of it being easy to get away from ourselves. Now, yesterday, I put in our previous show, and you'll hear me talk about it if you go back and listen to it and you've not yet watched it, but I put a poll out in our chat box that said, if you could know the team, if I could tell you what the team is going to be for the game later on today, but what that means is that we also reveal to Manchester City what the team is going to be, would you take it? Would you take that chance? Would you just want to clear your mind, clear the nerves, know who is going to be there, and selfishly understand that knowledge, in the selfishness being, of course, that you reveal to Manchester City who is available? And I was shocked. I tell you what, I was genuinely shocked that more than 30% of our listeners said that they would selfishly take that knowledge and give it to Manchester City ahead of this game, just to know who and who is not going to be there. I was shocked and disappointed. And I hope that plenty more of you do not fall into the trap of wanting to desperately know, because I get asked about so much in regards to team news. I get asked about who's fit, who's not going to be fit. And of course, what's so frustrating and what's so annoying is the idea that let's just hold our hands up to the fact that we don't want to give City any information. We want to keep things as quiet as feasibly possible. And that is really, really important to do. So stop asking me, stop asking others, keep it quiet, keep it to yourselves. If you know, if you get a little bit of a tip, don't go for the clout on social media. Hide it. We don't want to help our rivals in any way, shape, or form. No, thank you. Now, before we go into the questions, there is, of course, one more thing that I need to talk about, and that is the frustration that I say frustration. Hopefully, the game's wrapped up before, of course, the 4:30 kickoff. But the Conti Cup final today kicks off at 3 o'clock this afternoon between Arsenal and Chelsea. Now, Arsenal's last game against Chelsea in the WSL did not go well. There was sock controversy, and there was a really disappointing performance as well. And Genocide of will be looking to retain the Conti Cup, of course, from last season, but is up against a almighty challenge in Emma Hayes' final season as Chelsea head coach. And of course, we are hoping that Arsenal beat the odds and can do the do the deed today. But the frustration is that game will cross over with the start of the game against Manchester City at the Etihad, with that game kicking off at 4:30. So for me, I really do hope and wish our women all the absolute best and hope they can bring home the silverware today. But it's going to be a hell of a challenge. And both Arsenal teams involved in action today face incredible challenges. And we've got to keep those fingers crossed that they can both overcome those challenges. That's what we are keeping those fingers crossed for. Right, now I will turn my attention to the chat box and I will scroll up and see what questions you've got to ask. Nathan says, "Hey, Tom, I'm curious why English people seem to be the ones taking shots at Saka. I'm from the Côte d'Ivoire, and he's world class to me. Maybe there's something I'm missing. How do we know it's just English people? How do we know it's just English people taking shots at Saka? I think he's always had doubters across the world from different clubs, allegiances, depending on where and who you support. So I think Saka's always going to be under immense pressure, always facing plenty of scrutiny because he's drawn that level of scrutiny, So, yeah, I don't think we can be too worried about that. Just we know he's brilliant. We know he's world class. And that's ultimately what matters. Omar says, watching Isak last night, couldn't help but see Isak get disheartened after making a mistake and not track back. Do you think he has what it takes to succeed in our system? I absolutely do. I think you've also got to always think about the fact that a player playing where he is has not got the coaching of Arteta. He's not got that, those principles instilled in him yet. And so when they arrive at Arsenal, they're going to become better. Those issues will be ironed out and they will become better players for it as well, which is also worth pointing out. And John says, absolutely not. We need an element of secrecy when it comes to trying to learn what is the team and who is going to be available for today's game. Let's scroll a little bit more. Reese says, I couldn't think of anything worse than going to a United fan channel on a Sunday, each to their own, I guess. Imagine having to be, I'm sorry, our resident Man United fan in the chat, who is a big Luke Shaw fan. But goodness me, it must be difficult to be a Man United fan at the moment. It must be hard. I mean, we're loving it, but it must be difficult. And it must have been difficult for the last however many years as well. Nav says he always gets compared to everyone, or people do the Foden Saka comparison. I think Saka is miles ahead, to be honest. He's just, for me, I don't see why we need to make the comparison, to be honest. They're both world-class young players. They're both brilliant, brilliant footballers. Foden's had the benefit of being able to play for a team that has obviously been more competitive at the top of the elite level than Arsenal have over the last fair few years. And Saka has been part of the process to take Arsenal back to the top of elite football and help us to compete in that arena as well. And now we'll see, now that Arsenal are amongst those teams, whether, of course, that can be translated into silverware. Aaron says, TC, remember when you said if Arsenal beat Man City today, you'd treat the channel members to an Arsenal cheesecake and a Nando's chocolate cake? I don't remember that, Aaron. I really don't. I don't know where the cheesecakes come from. I definitely have been talking about chocolate cake a lot. But I don't remember that, Aaron. That'd be quite the investment. Quite the investment indeed for the several hundred members that we've got. Marble Hall says, would you take a point today, Thomas? I would indeed, yes. If you offered me a point now, I think I would take it. I think last season I said I wouldn't. I wanted to see how it plays out, and I naively didn't take that point, and I rather wish that I did now. So yes, I think in retrospect, I should have taken that point last season. And if you offered me the point now, I absolutely would take that point now. I think that a draw is a good result for us. I think it keeps us very much in the title race. It keeps us ahead of Manchester City with an advantage over them. We've still got an advantage over Liverpool, of course, in terms of goal difference at the moment. I'd expect them to beat Brighton, and I expect them to get those points that they need today. But for me, yes, I absolutely would take the point if you offered it to me right now. Chris says, I have a feeling that the subs are going to make a difference, and it would be amazing if Smith Rowe was a bit of a hero today. I don't see a world where we bring Smith Rowe on to be something of a hero unless we're like losing. And in that case, I don't know whether or not, the heroics of getting an equaliser will be talked about unless you, of course, win the league. I don't know where Smith Rowe would come on because you've got Jesus now. We've got Nelson, who's ahead of Smith Rowe in the pecking order. We've got Vieira back as well, who seems to also have a bit of an edge over Smith Rowe. Martinelli could be on the bench today, of course. If not, Trossard, of course, will be there too. I don't see where Smith Rowe would and when he would come on. So there's potential always for him to be a hero, but we don't know whether or not that would happen. Dickens says, hey, Tom, if Partey was to be the difference in our game against City but leave the game injured again, would you start him or leave him out for the other games? That's an impossible question, isn't it? It's like saying you can start Partey and you win, but he's then not available for the rest of the season. Would I do it to get the 3 points? I think so, yeah, probably because I know that we've managed to get to the top of the table without Partey. So for that reason, I would lean towards saying yes, because I know that we can be where we are today without Partey being available. So if it means having Partey and losing him for the last 9 games, but it means that we win today, yes, I probably would take that. Patrick says, would you start Partey over Jorginho? No, absolutely not. I do not understand the rhetoric to start Partey. Partey has been out of things for a long, long time. He's just played a little bit of football in terms of that behind closed doors, friendly 4-0 defeat to QPR. Jorginho, yes, has had some injury issues, and yes, suppose he's carrying something. That's why Partey is on the bench if we need to replace Jorginho. Jorginho was fantastic against Liverpool. He was man of the match again. I think he was a man of the match figure against Porto. I had someone in my comments leaving some pretty derisory stuff about Jorginho, saying he somehow got lucky, despite the fact he picked up the man of the match award in those games. He has been brilliant, Jorginho. Utterly fantastic. There is no... What's the word I want to use to be as respectful as possible? There is no right-minded, perhaps is probably the best way to put it. There is no right-minded person that picks Partey to start this game over Jorginho, who has watched Arsenal over the last 4 months, that has watched how we've played, has watched the importance of Jorginho, has seen how out Partey has been, and picks Partey over Jorginho for this game now. No one in their right mind does that. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever to pick Partey over Jorginho at all, whatsoever. Now, I think Partey can have a big impact come the end of the season, and perhaps even a big impact in this game, But as Chun-Ho says here, Jorginho and Kivior deserve to start. They have put themselves into a position where they deserve to start. And, that's going to be very, very key indeed. Pico says, did the Easter Bunny come to the TGT household today? Not swapped eggs yet. Eggs are present and will be swapped, but haven't done that yet. But happy Easter to everybody, of course, that is celebrating today. John says, do you think Ramsdale will leave in the summer? And are Hine and Okonkwo good enough to be our number 2s? I think Ramsdale will be out in the summer. Okonkwo will also be, to my understanding, will be leaving in the summer. His contract with Arsenal expires and he's on loan with Wrexham. So that contract is expected to expire and he will leave on a permanent deal come the end of the season. I've been told that there is no intention still to re-sign him to a brand new contract. And so he'll leave on a free. Karl Hein, I don't think is going to be good enough. I think he actually needs to leave as well. I think he needs to go and get some first-team football on a more regular basis. So I expect all 3 of those potentially will not be at Arsenal next season. So I guess we will watch this space. Granddaddy Gooner says Saka is an Arsenal player and will always be played down. I was chatting with a Chelsea fan the other day and thinks that Eden Hazard is better than any Arsenal player that has played in the Premier League. I mean, you're entitled to your opinion. We know that's not true. Eden Hazard is one of the best players to ever play in the Premier League. But when you've had players like Thierry Henry, Patrick Vieira, Dennis Bergkamp, Robert Pires, it's very difficult. It's very difficult to compare Eden Hazard to those guys. But in the modern era, Eden Hazard is one of the best players to ever play in the Premier League, that's for sure. Stephen says, Tom, 755 watching and only 215 likes. How about everyone giving a like not only for TGT, but everyone who turned up early today? Indeed, if you did manage to remember that the show is now at this time every single morning, especially for those not in the UK and don't have the reminder of their own clocks to help them work that out, please do drop a like. Of course, we try and hit 1,000 likes every single day on this show. And today of all days, it is probably going to be the biggest challenge we've had to do that, because not only is it a Sunday, it is a match day, and it is also the day in which the clocks went forward. So yes, if you could indeed drop a like on the video and help us towards our goal of 1K every single day, that would be hugely appreciated. So thank you for that. So Nicholas says, Tom, I already need my anxiety meds. Please help. I can't prescribe those to you, I'm afraid. So Nicholas, you're going to have to sort them out yourself. Kazang says, the match we won against City earlier this season, City were missing De Bruyne and Rodri, and Havertz was on the bench. They're also missing Walker and Stones this time around as well. It is worth pointing out 2 other big misses. They will have Rodri and De Bruyne for this game, and we will also have, hopefully, William Saliba like we didn't have in the game last season, and we'll have Rice available for us, and Havertz will be starting, I imagine, up top too. So plenty to be positive and optimistic about. Jacob says, what do you think about the Arsenal win? I've touched upon it already, but obviously massively challenging game today against Chelsea, and hopefully we can do the business. Jake says 1,000 likes equals an Arsenal win. I hope that's true, and I hope that is certainly the case. Let's see if indeed it would be quite the omen if indeed we do get to 1K and manage to pick up all 3 points in our most challenging game of the season. Rejected Billionaire says, today being episode 444 is not just a coincidence. We're winning. It's written in the stars. Bruce says 2:30 a.m. here in Jamaica. Can't sleep. Too excited. 11:30 a.m. match. Is it too late to sleep? I mean, Brucey, you need to get yourself to sleep. Get yourself well rested, son. I understand your anxiousness, but you need to get some sleep, my friend. And appreciate everyone who always tunes in early in the morning over in the West to listen to these shows. I know how difficult it can be to stay up to watch these. Carl says, Tom, how soon would you expect Chido Obi-Martin to get first team minutes like Saka did? I'd say the 25-26 season, easier attacking talent to get minutes. Maybe we'll see him involved. I'd like to see him start getting some minutes in friendlies and pre-season and stuff like that. He's not yet signed a professional contract, of course, because he's not 17, like Ethan Nwaneri did a few days ago. So we have to wait until that happens. He can't go on loan because he's not signed a professional contract either. You're not able to do that until you've signed a professional contract. So next year, I guess, will be the year in which he signs that pro deal, and then we'll see indeed what the future holds for Chido Obi-Martin. And then you've got Max Dowman, who you're going to have to wait an amazing 3 years to sign a professional contract with Arsenal because he's only 14. Absolutely mad. Alexander says, huge fan, always listen to the show on the way to work. Who do you think is the most pivotal player for today's important match? I think I have to go with Declan Rice because Rodri's presence this time around is different to earlier in the season. He is unbeaten in 61 games. In more than a year of football, he has not lost a fixture for Man City. If Declan Rice can win the midfield battle over Rodri, anything can happen. Anything is possible. So let's wait and see if indeed we're able to do that. We'll end the show with predictions, I think. Paul says, honest, 2-0 win. Both penalties will do. Chunho says, 1-0 to the Arsenal is my prediction. We're going to repeat what Overmars did at Old Trafford. Imagine that. If we can do an Overmars style 1-0 win in Manchester, just at the other stadium, of course, as well. But get your predictions in. Kazang's going 3-1. Maximus going 1-1. Bruce going for a 2-0 win. Peter going for a 1-1, as is Nick. Micah says a 3-1. Hopefully that's to Arsenal. Damien says 2-1 Arsenal. Luke Shaw's going for a City 2, Arsenal 10. John says Man City 1, Arsenal 2. We've got Pablo's going for a 9-0 win. Love that. Pika, who says 2-1 Arsenal. Parrot says 4-1 Arsenal. Rancy says 2-1. Cedric banger from the halfway line. Imagine. Aaron says 1-1, but if I had to pick a winner, 2-1 Arsenal. Beth's going for a 2-1. Hopefully that's a win. Z says 0-0 at full time. I'm not sure my nerves could take that one. Matt G says 1-0 Arsenal. Jason says 10-0. Again, hopefully that's to Arsenal. Mr. E says 3-2. Zach 2-1. Walking Man says 2-1 to the Arsenal. Kevin says Jesus to start and get an opening goal. 3-1 to Arsenal. Lois says Head says 1-1. Hart says 2-1. Steve says 2-2. Sorry, folks. Benilia says 2-1 Arsenal. Josh says, hi, Tom. Is it true that Arsenal are linked with Ismail Benacer? I think we always get linked with Benacer, doesn't he? Because he used to play for Arsenal. Khalid says 3-2. Tom says 2-1 Arsenal, but I'd take a draw. Dorian says 2-0 Saka, world class, and a cheeky Declan Rice dagger as well. Anish says City 1, Arsenal will. That's our first defeat prediction in the chat box. Galactic Cantina says 2-1 to the Arsenal. Odegaard and Havertz and Haaland on the score sheet. Josh says 2-2. Alex says 1-1 with a late Arsenal equaliser. Unknown None says 3-0 to the Arsenal. And Jacob says 2-1. I'll keep throwing up these score lines as we round off today's show. Thank you so much to all of you that have continued to tune into today's episode. It's a big day. It's the biggest day of Arsenal's season thus far, and we're very excited about it. We can't wait for it, and I'm really looking forward to seeing, what Arsenal can produce at the Etihad Stadium. We are in the best form that we could possibly be going into this game. We've got the best availability of players, with hopefully some fingers crossed over Saka, Martinelli, and of course Gabriel. We'll have to wait and see if they're going to be involved in any form a little bit later on this afternoon and see who has travelled. I'm sure we'll get some little tips and info come through a little bit later on today. But it's an exciting day. It's a big day. And of course, you can be remembering that we will be discussing this game in detail tomorrow morning, bright and early, 8 a.m. will be our Raw Reaction UK time. Of course, thank you for those that have remembered that this show is now at this time every single morning for the foreseeable future, unless you've got your own daylight savings coming up in your nation. So make sure you keep your eyes peeled for that. But thank you for listening. Have a fantastic day. And I hope that everything goes our way. I'll see you soon. Stay safe, stay well, stay happy and respectful. And as always, up the Arsenal.